So just looking at the part B of this question, just to kind of clarify, it's not an evaluate question. So what's required is subtly different. So for a discuss question, covering a range of really important points, and so there's several different ways governments can do this, making food affordable. Covering a range of stakeholders, so just being really precise on impacts on government and different types of income groups. I think most importantly is this idea of you've done a synthesis of the arguments, you've pulled them together, and you've kind of picked out some of the most important ideas that have come through. So it's not necessarily a pros and cons argument, which is quite important. The three things, so from this kind of point here, I think there's three policies that governments tend to do, and most people cover these. First one is the idea of a price control. That's a way that you can provide it for provide things cheaply. Second way that most people did as well is the idea of providing a subsidy to make things cheaper. So you've got price controls, subsidy. The third one is some kind of form of government provision. And how this occurs is quite different, and some people explain this in certain ways. You could have things like food vouchers, where you just gift money, and that's maybe a form of, we discussed this in class, that's like a type of what's called a transfer payment. Some people went on sort of tangents here as well, and talking about you could do things to a minimum wage, and you could do things to make the economy more productive. True. I'm not sure how it targets low incomes though, that's the trick. And I'll come to kind of some examples. So just really quickly, just kind of a student's example here. It's really important to have a good kind of introduction. I think you should sort of state what your several ways are. This is good. So setting substitutes, set minimum price, and advances in technology. So the student made a point about three things. Good start. If you've got a graph that you've actually done in the previous question, you don't need to refer back to it. You could actually just say that I've done this diagram before, if that makes sense. But anyway, it's probably important somewhere to have a graph. But things like a subsidy, a discussion point is actually, does that make it more affordable for everybody or just low incomes? And that's quite an important point to think about, which lots of you did cover really nicely. You can talk about consumer surplus, potentially. A lot of you got off sort of topic here, starting to talk about different types of like how it affects producers and governments. It's okay to cover part of that. So price ceilings, kind of a clear diagram showing idea of a shortage. And potentially this does help low-income people, but it probably also helps people on higher incomes. And then people got into other alternatives. So this one talked about actually technology as being one way, and you're making firms more productive. That could be alright. One kind of way. Some people talked about minimum wages as being one way you could make food more appropriate. So you can discuss a variety of different ways. The trick is that at the end, for kind of getting, if you want to be at the very top, what's called level 4, that kind of 13 to 15 band, is that you've probably got some examples. So you've got some examples of where food's trying to be made cheaper, so sort of maybe price controls on onions in India. There's been examples of food coupons in the United States. So you might have read a little bit about some of those ways that governments provide things for free. Or you've talked about subsidies and how subsidies could be used to encourage production in farms to make goods cheaper. Okay.